Welcome back to Roaming with Restless Women. Today I have an author with us. Melania is a writer, speaker, and author of Bound by Love, Not Tradition, Empowering Women Through Married Name Choices. With a degree in applied behavioral science, she enjoys blending storytelling with research to explore identity, relationships, and the traditions that shape our choices. Her articles appear in national publications, and she's frequently a guest on podcasts discussing the deeply personal and cultural complex topic of married name choices. And that was a big one for me, I have to say, Melania. Thank you for joining us. Her real name is Melanie Murphy, but her pen name is Melania. So great to meet you.
Yeah, and actually, I know we discussed this before, but it's Melania. Yeah, because
Melania.
because I
Okay.
know a lot of people know the name Melania, but yeah, the way that I've always pronounced it is Melania.
Oh dear. Well, thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. Melania, it's good to meet
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Yes, it's great to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
Well, I am a divorced woman who remarried. My kids were 16 and 13 when my divorce came through. I kept my married name because of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never gone back to my maiden name. I remarried and I just added his name to the end. you know.
Uh-huh.
So, tell me a little bit about how you started your career and how you became an author focused specifically on women's empowerment and how the whole married name situation
Mm-hmm.
comes into focus.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I'd love to share that story. And I do have a very interesting story because when I went to college a few years ago, it seems everything in my life now is a few years ago, whether it's like 5 or 20 or whatever.
Right? Yeah.
But I went to college for accounting
Okay.
because, at the time, my stepfather really instilled in me, you got to get a job that, a secure office job that's going to pay the bills and everything. And at that time, you didn't have to have your bachelor's degree to sit for the CPA. So I went through and I got all my credits and everything. You had to have enough credits for a bachelor's, but you didn't have to have your bachelor's. Anyway, long story short, I got enough credits because I was doing it all on my own. I sat for the CPA and I didn't pass because there's 4 parts. I didn't pass one of them. And it occurred to me, I hate accounting. I don't want to do this. And so it was kind of a blessing that I didn't pass. And I kind of went into this kind of deep depression like, who am I? Where am I going with all this? And I came out of it loving to write. Just like that's what was in me. I really wanted to write. I went back. I lived by a community college, so I went back to classes to become a writer and a journalist, and that's how I became a journalist. Yeah, and so I've been a journalist for over 25 years. Um,
Wow.
but but this story of married name choices, it always kind of was that bubbling thought underneath, kind of like why don't men change their names? Why
Hmm.
with no laws now in the United States saying that women have to change their name, which all 50 states did not allow women to keep their own name until 1983. Can you believe that? It wasn't until 1983 that all the laws were taken off the books. Anyway, so I just found it really interesting, and I really wanted to dig into it. When I went back to school, I ended up getting my degree in applied behavioral science, which is
Hmm.
really the study of how people interact. And so that kind of led into my desire to research this topic further and really dig into why do so many people cling to this tradition, and because it is a tradition now more than it is a law, when there's so many other options. That's right.
Absolutely. So tell me about any surprising facts that you learned during your
Mm,
research. So, for instance, you
sure.
mentioned in your bio that you've researched outside of the United States,
Hmm.
and outside the Western cultural norms. Tell me about some of the surprising findings you found.
Yeah, yeah, that was really interesting, or it is really interesting because right now, Japan is still they're fighting because or trying to change the laws in Japan because right now in Japan husband and wife, they have to have the same name. You know, they can't have the wife keep her birth name and the husband keep his. They have to have the same last name, or else they're not even acknowledged as a married couple. And even though they can take
Wow.
one name or the other, 99% of the time it's the woman taking the man's name. And so, there are laws, and it's Japan's not the only one. In Greece, during a wave of feminism, they wanted more equality. So they made the law that women are not allowed to change their names. So,
Oh, so
so
that's the
you know,
opposite.
it's the
Ugh.
opposite. And then also up in Quebec, not all of Canada, but just Quebec, because they're closer tied to the French laws over there. It's the same thing that women are not allowed to change their name. So in the United States, all the laws now have been taken away. There are no laws saying that women cannot change their name, and there's no law saying that men cannot change their name. So I just, I find that fascinating that now that all the laws are taken away and we have supposedly all these freedoms around this topic, 80% of women still drop their name and take on the husband's name. So that intrigued me to kind of research why. Why is that?
Right. Well, my oldest daughter got married when she got married. They did something entirely different. They
Love
combined
to
their
hear it.
last two names.
Right.
So
Like
it's not
together or like,
totally together. So it
okay,
was
yeah.
Stein was her last name and
Uh-huh.
McCall was his last name.
Okay.
So they took Steall and now they are Steele.
Oh,
They
interesting.
completely changed,
I
the
love
whole
that.
thing. And
Uh-huh.
man, let me tell you, it has been really interesting because a lot of people will ask me why they did that. And I said, well, why are you asking me? Why not ask them?
Okay.
Right. And at the wedding, people were totally confused when the pastor said, now pronounce you Mr. and Mrs. Steele. And neither one of their names Steele.
Right. Right. Yes. That is so
But
interesting. I love
it
that. Hmm.
is. And
Hmm.
now they have a son. And so
Uh-huh.
his name is Steele.
Uh-huh.
And I made a comment in the car, actually just yesterday to her. I said, you've made that whole ancestry project for Asher really hard.
Well, that's such an interesting story, and I love that. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I think I would have loved to have created a new name. But what I especially love about your daughter's situation is that she and her husband, soon to be husband at the time, they worked together to come up with
Oh,
a
yes.
solution that worked best for them because sometimes the best option is to take the man's name, but sometimes the best option is to take the woman's name or create a new name. And I love the option of, two people coming together and it's not about his family, it's not about her
Right.
family, it's about their family
Their
and their
family.
future going forward together. And they've created a new name for their family. I
Right.
love that.
It's going to be interesting if I'm still around when my grandson gets old enough and decides to marry, if he decides to marry, what
Uh-huh.
his approach is going to be. It could be a whole nother new name. So
Hmm.
that'll be really fun, actually.
But the really great thing is too that what I love is that men now your grandson as he grows up, he won't just assume the woman is going to take the man's name because
No.
that is still that's still the societal expectation in our country is that a woman will take the man's name. And I think the saddest thing is when that tradition is followed as an assumption, as just not even having a conversation between the two couples, like, hey, what's best for us? I know your name is important to you, your ancestry is important to you, mine is important to me. What should we do? And move forward together. But there's still, even, well, we're almost in 2026, but there's still so many couples that don't even have that conversation. They just assume she's going to change her name. And, a lot of times, even for the women, they haven't even thought, well, what are my other options? Yeah.
Well, it certainly brought it to light earlier this year when I heard about the potential SAVE Act. And for those of you who don't know what the SAVE Act is, it is a potential law that that says you can't vote unless your birth certificate matches your current identity. So your passport, for instance. I've been through, I'm on my third name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what happens when my response to that was, uh, let them try not to let me vote. You know, just let them try. But that particular law, and I don't know where it stands right now. I don't know if you know where it
It,
is in the process.
yeah, it passed the first set of Congress, but it hasn't gone to the second set yet.
Okay.
Um, so we'll see. But the interesting part about that is, and I know a lot of the headlines emphasized about the women's name because, again, the
Yeah.
80% of women who are getting married are still changing their name. But in addition to people getting married, 50,000 people each year change their name because, for whatever reason,
Right.
because if they're a celebrity, maybe it's a better stage name. For myself, even the name on my birth certificate is Melania, but I go by Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
That's typically my nickname is Melanie. So even for me, not even having, well, I have been married. I've been married twice, and I've changed my name once. I changed it once, and not the other two. Anyway, but even my name doesn't match my birth certificate. For what I use, my driver's license doesn't match my birth certificate, even on the first name. But 50,000 people a year, they change their names because, for religious reasons, for personal identity reasons, for, just a whole slew
Mm-hmm.
of different reasons. And men change their names every day too, simply because they want to, or simply because of whatever reason. So I, yes, I'm glad the headlines brought the attention to, women, how this may affect women more than men, but it may affect people in the rural communities, the people who may not have financial access to get their paperwork updated too. So
Oh,
um,
yeah.
there's a lot involved in it, and it does go beyond just women changing their names, but
Oh,
we'll see where
yeah.
that goes.
Absolutely. I just think it disproportionately disadvantages women.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, and I'm a big feminist, sorry, but
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I was brought up. And I've lived a life that required
Uh-huh.
me to be strong and independent outside of
Yeah.
any man.
Yeah.
So, I didn't live that, oh, you know, my dad left when I was 16 and
Uh-huh.
I had to pay for my own college. I had
Yeah.
to do, so I didn't live the kind of life that a man ever had to shelter me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, and it's not just about a man, anybody, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't live a life that anybody had to shelter me. I was always
Mm-hmm.
independent. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times women, without even thinking about it, like you said, they give up that independent part of them,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that along with the name change, okay, now, somebody has got my back or somebody is going to take care of me the rest of my life, and which may or may
Mm-hmm.
not be the case. You hope
Right.
marriages last, but sometimes they don't
Yeah. Right. Right.
for
Yes.
whatever reason.
You and I both know that. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we do.
Yeah.
So what was it that prompted you to actually write the book?
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to, I'm glad you asked that question because in addition to just the kind of like percolating underneath for a while, I, um, and I thought, well, maybe there's a different way to get this information out there. But there was two things that really kind of stuck with me that I wanted to really get out there into the world. Is number one, that a woman's identity, her ancestry, and her place in society is equal to that of any man. So I really want women to feel empowered to know that and
Mm-hmm.
to use this topic, married name choices, to empower them to say, hey, you know what? I'm equal to you. Why? In this one topic, this is my second point. This one topic is one area where women can assert themselves. No, nobody's holding them
Right.
back. I say that with a caveat. No one's holding them back except for societal expectations. But when we start looking at those expectations, we can kind of break it down. And that's what this is all about, looking at what's underneath, underneath that tradition, and why are we still feeling held back by the number, one thing that we have control over, saying, hey, you know what? My name is as important as your name. My identity
Mm-hmm.
in my name, my ancestry in my name, it's as important as yours is. And how to do that with love and compassion, kind of like, your daughter and her
Yeah.
now husband. It's if we look, and two, if we look at same-sex couples, they have more of these intentional conversations, kind of like,
Right.
you're one person, I'm a person, we're equal people. What are we going to do with our name? For a lot of people, they want the same family name. So a lot of women just say, well, he's not going to give up his name, so I guess I'm going to have to like give up my name. But if you look at same-sex couples, and you take the sex out of it, the gender out of it, they're two equal people. So I would love to see women see themselves as that. I am equal to you. Let's come to the negotiating table as equal partners and let's come up with a solution that's best for us. Because if we keep, just going with the same assumption that, well, that's tradition. He's the head of the household. He's, this and stuff. We're giving more
Yeah.
power to the man. So I want women to say, hey, you know what? We are equal partners. Let's find a solution on equal terms here. And that's what I'm really hoping to do with this book. I can't remember what your actual question was, but that was
No,
one of the points I
no,
wanted to
you
make.
answered it. It was what prompted you specifically to write the book. And
Yeah.
it's to me, it also goes beyond the name conversation.
Yes.
It could prompt other conversations that need to be had about equality,
Mm-hmm.
in a marriage or
Mm-hmm.
in a partnership.
Right.
Because just because, just because you're the man or you make more money than me, or if it's a woman, you make more money than me, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you're in control of the finances. It means we need to share that control of the finances. We need to talk
Right.
about what are our goals and together and who's contributing
Mm-hmm.
what. And it doesn't have to be to the penny equal either. What you're committing to is
Right.
the goals, is the future, is
Yes.
what you're trying to accomplish together. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times, well, research shows that finances are probably the number one reason why people break up, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because finances and money has power.
Mm-hmm.
And we're stupid if we don't think that. We're stupid if we don't realize that.
Yeah.
Um, but having those equality conversations, I think, is something that your book
Mm-hmm.
also can lead to.
Mm-hmm. Right. And because the other thing that I realized is that women are giving their power away when they say things like, well, since our kids are going to get his name, stop right there. Why are the kids going to
Right.
get his name? Why are we still
Exactly.
making that assumption that our children have to take the man's name? It was in 1969, I think, 69, 65, that or maybe it was 63. Anyway, sometime in the 60s, that the bastard law was abolished, where at that time in the 60s, again, if a couple was married, the child had to get the father's name so that he or she would be entitled to the father's inheritance. So again, there were laws, that were really holding women back. A lot of these laws have been abolished, and thank you to all the women and men, who have fought for our equality legally. But the traditions and the social expectations are still there. Those ghosts of coverture, they're still among us all the time. So even now in 2025, we're going into 2026, how many people just assume that a child will receive the man's name? And so, even right there, the woman gives up her power by saying, well, I guess if I want the same name as my children, I'm going to have to drop my name and I'm going to have to take on his name. Well, it doesn't have to happen that way.
Right.
Who is it to say that, okay, if I keep my name and he keeps his name, who's to say that the children shouldn't get my name? Or who's to say that I keep my name, he keeps his name, and now our children have a hyphenated name or our children have a combined name. So I want to bring
Mhm.
these things to light so women understand where we're giving away our power and we don't need to.
Well, and it also brings up a really important conversation about how much a name really means.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that we often think about.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to your personal identity, what is the first thing you think of is your name?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
When I
and
first got married
wow,
at the I'm not too young to get married age of 21, at one
I was
and I
23. Yeah.
and I did exactly what 80% of women do now. I just nonchalantly just, got to the part where you sign the license and I put down his name instead of my own name. But the one thing now looking back, there's many things, but the one thing looking back is I didn't realize how I had a German surname and he had an Irish name. By taking on this Irish name, that my kids lost their German ancestry. Like they identify as Irish. And that's it. And as much as I fed them sauerkraut and told stories about, our ancestors and, even taught them the polka. And we even had like a passed down this lederhosen that, like a 4-year-old could wear. And so we all took pictures of it and everything.
Oh,
They identify as Irish, so, and
yeah.
at the time, I, well, now I've done a DNA test, so I do actually have 7% of Irish in me. But at the time, I didn't think I had any Irish blood in me at all. So, I completely lost my German ancestry and took on the Irish ancestry. And interestingly, when I got married the second time, I did have this intentional conversation with my now husband. And, at one point I said, well, maybe if we want to have the same name, we can go back in my, ancestry and, maybe we could take one of those names. Both of us change our name. So how about Schultz? And he's like, Schultz. He goes, I'm not German. I'm Irish. So for
Oh, yeah.
his Irish ancestry was a big part of his identity and who he is. But for a woman, who cares about your ancestry? You're marrying a man, so you should just give that up. So, right. I mean, there's a whole the name there's a lot wrapped into your name, good or bad. Some people are happy to get rid of a name and some people aren't. But and in my book, so I structured it, each chapter we go through this framework called SELF, and it stands for significance, empowerment, legacy, and freedom. And
Wow.
significance has a lot to do with your identity, how you're
Absolutely.
what's the significance in your name? And one example I used in there is Kelly Clarkson. We all know Kelly Clarkson, the musician, the talk show host. And, when she got married, she changed her name. When she got divorced, she changed her name, but not back to her maiden name. She said that that name just no longer fit who she was, her personality. So she changed her name to Kelly Brienne. And so that is now her legal name, even though her stage presence is still Kelly Clarkson. But the significance in that name to her she felt matched her personality. And so that's what she chose to go by. So there's a lot of fun examples like that I show in my book. It's fun.
So, I mean, like we just talked about, there's a lot of significance, like you said, wrapped up in your name. Have you looked at yet um, adopted individuals? And the reason why I ask is my second daughter is adopted from Russia.
Uh-huh.
So the name on her original birth certificate was Aptenieva Vladimirovna Daria.
Okay.
So we kept Daria because I felt like that was a gift from her birth mother. And then we changed her name to Daria Joy, and her last name is Stein. So now her last name is German. Her dad is pretty much all German and some English. Um, and I've had numerous conversations with her. I let her have her original paperwork when she was about 14. She hadn't asked for it, but I said, "Hey, we've talked from your whole life that you're adopted from Russia, and here's the paperwork if you want to look at it and all this stuff." Have you looked at adopted individuals and what their names mean to them?
Mhm. No, I haven't. As far as research for my book, I have not. The only time that it's kind of come up is in that passing on the male surname, because
Mm-hmm.
even when couples adopt a child, they typically give the child the man's surname over the woman's,
Mm-hmm.
even if the couple has different last names. But the other time that it came up is when I looked at, again, 50,000 people change their names every year outside of marriage. And some of the reasons were because they felt their name was too ethnic, and they wanted to blend into American society, because that's what I'm looking for, just American. But then some people too wanted to honor, their birth ethnicity too, and wanted to change her name to something like that. So again, I think it's more in, right, the significance of how your name represents you as a person, and what that person feels is the best name to identify with.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
I think it's fascinating. I think your research and the insights that you gather, I think it's just fascinating. And thank you for bringing that to the conversation, because we really don't dig deep a lot of times into what really makes us and our significance. And we focus a lot on personality. A lot of us focus on heritage and ancestry, but we really don't bring that into that personal realm very, very often. So thank you
Mhm.
for that.
Mhm.
Do you
Thank you.
have, can you let people know how to get a hold of you? And then we'll get into my last three questions.
Okay. Sure. My website is melaniajoy.com. So it's melaniajoy.com. And I have all the information there about my book and about articles that I've written, and the whole purpose behind my book, and married name choices. So I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. And
Perfect.
yeah, yeah.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for that. And folks, I'll put all of that in the show. I'll put her Melania Joy,
I know
sorry,
it's
Melania
tricky.
Joy .com into the show notes so you can get a hold of her afterwards. Okay, here are my last three questions, and I ask this of
Okay.
every person that comes on my show. All right,
Okay.
if you could close your eyes just for a moment.
Okay.
All right, describe what you see in your mind's eye when I say wise woman.
I pictured my grandmother, who she passed away when I was 11, and but so at that time, can I open my eyes now?
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
so at that time, I just felt that she was a very wise woman, and I looked to her to you know, my mom had just remarried and she was busy with,
Mm.
life. So my grandmother was the one who I felt was a wise woman, and I could go to her with my problems, my concerns, and things like that.
Oh, it's such a blessing to have a grandma like that. I had two
It
of
sure
them,
was.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I really appreciate grandmas. Okay, second question. Where do you like to roam, Melania?
Where do I like to roam? Two things popped into my mind. As we mentioned, we live in Florida, and so I love going to the beach. Love, having my toes in the sand and walking along in the shoreline. And then also, my husband and I, we have an RV, and so and we have six kids, and they all live in six different states.
Oh,
So
goodness.
I love getting in the RV and going to visit them or just going to a campground or a national park, things like that. Yeah.
I have an
Yeah.
RV as well. We're trying to sell it,
Oh,
but we lived full time on
that
the
day.
road for 2 years, and
Oh,
then
did you really?
yeah, and then when
Uh-huh.
my daughter had her son a year ago, I said I can't leave him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we settled back
Uh-huh.
down. But anyway, we still have the RV, so we'll probably take it out a
Okay.
couple times until we sell it. But okay, so here's my final question.
Okay.
What makes you restless, but in a good way?
What makes me restless, but in a good way? I think the thing that came to mind is when I get one of these ideas that I want to share with other people and like just kind of like, how do I get that information out there? How do I get this message out there that I feel is important and I want to share with other people? Yeah.
Sounds like a real journalist there. I tell you, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank
And
you. This was so
we,
fun.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. If you get up this way, come and visit.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep in touch.
Sounds great. Thank you. And folks, again, the show in the show notes is her website link. So go and check it out. Check out her book. Talk to you
Yeah, thank
soon.
you.
Julie Noonan here. Thank you so much for listening to Roaming with Restless Women. If you're a successful senior woman leader who would like to be on this program, please visit podcast.intuitivewisdomcoach.com. If you enjoyed this interview, please share this episode on social media and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your thumbs ups and reviews go a long way.